Hey mamas, it's Kristen Noel, founder of the Intuitive Divorce, popping in here right after class with my wonderful, amazing team member, Joe Young, master coach. And as we try to do, we pop in right after class when we're just still really in the energy of what transpired in this beautiful sacred space, this container, about 90 minutes. And it's always amazing and magical, and we never know what's going to come up. And again, as we always say, women in this group are at very different places in their divorce process. And there's just incredibly powerful reflection that takes place. It's really, really valuable. And today it was really interesting. Well, we actually had somebody graduating, which is always really hard. I don't like to let anybody out of my nest, but it's incredible to be able to celebrate a woman who is really ready. We're just nudging her out and celebrating where she has come. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that the ink is dry on her divorce papers. It's about what she has accomplished and achieved for herself, how she has calmed her nervous system, how she has reclaimed her power, how she has remembered who she is, how she has allowed a new vision for herself, her future, her children, and her becoming to unfold in real time in front of us. And we get to reflect that back to her. So we got to do that today. And we also got to really unpack something that's coming up for a lot of mamas, which is just the discomfort of transition. And it came up for a lot of mamas in particular because we're coming off of holidays where kids are home and maybe somebody went away for a little bit of time and then they had to come back. And so we were hearing sort of repeatedly today was this coming back to reality. And we wanted to really unpack that with them because before we got into the reality, what's coming back to reality, we all know what it's like to be like away on a fabulous vacation and you come home and then, the mail is piled high and you got to get back to work and the laundry, is full or whatever. We know all of those realities. But what we really wanted to talk about today was and celebrate. What was it that you did while you were away? Like, for one example, one mom in the group, this was her first Easter without her spouse, and she wanted to make it special. So she went and she rented a house and she invited her family, and she was on the water, and she was going to have this, she was creating new traditions, and she had this beautiful 4 days away. And then it was like, oh, yeah, now I'm coming home. I got to face reality. So let's unpack that a little bit, right? Because that
Yeah,
came up in a couple of ways, and the importance of that, right?
yes, absolutely. And it was interesting. I mean, obviously it's spring break time, so a lot of people are going away and coming back, but we had multiple people today facing the same thing where it was
Mhm.
like, yeah, as soon as the car or the plane turned around and to come in this direction, all those feelings started settling back in again. And, it's no surprise because as we were explaining to some of the mamas, and especially around nervous system, what our bodies are used to is that reality that they've been living in, right? The hard times, all the paperwork that has to be done, all the different things, the negotiations, the this, the that, on top of regular everyday life. And it's like, yeah. So when your thought goes to, oh, I'm going back home, automatically the body relates to that, right?
Mhm.
So we have to train the body to do something different. We have to train our nervous systems to expect something different, to be able to hold the capacity for something different. So I loved it today because we were able to say to the first mama that brought this up, what were you feeling when you were away? What were the feelings? you know? And how can you now infuse those feelings at home?
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that the tasks change. It just means what can you do? This particular mom was talking about one of the words that she used was peace. Okay, it was peaceful. How can you start to infuse peacefulness in your own home?
Mhm.
How can you start to approach your daily tasks and create some peace? Maybe you light some candles. Maybe you play some music while you have to fill out that paperwork or get to fill out that paperwork, which
Hmm.
we also talked
Oh yeah,
about.
that's your favorite word.
Um, yes, yes, reframing that have
Hmm.
to get
Hmm.
to. And, but what can you do to really incorporate that feeling into your everyday life so that that's what your nervous system gets used to? That's what your body starts to relate to. And then that becomes your new normal. It's a reframe, right?
And
It's a
the
reframe and a retrain.
Exactly. Exactly. Because also this is, really harnessing the power of your awareness. Now, obviously, if you're off on a lavish vacation in Paris, it's going to feel fabulous, right? And then you're going to come back to certain realities of like being at work and being in routine and having to unload the dishwasher. But we're not talking about that. What we were really trying to focus on is noticing how this mother created this. She did this on her own. She was like, okay, I want to take charge of the fact that this will be my first Easter without my spouse. And it's going to feel really weird if I'm at home where we have all these traditions and all these routines.
Mhm,
What could I do to feel better? And she did this. She figured it out. She rented a house in a place that she wanted to be. They had a great 4 days. Her parents came. They had a lot of fun. They had a lot of laughter. It wasn't necessarily about the details. It was about that she took action and she
mhm.
created something. And by the way, if you can create that, if you can create 4 days away, yes, you can bring some of that home with you, but you can also be really curious about saying, I like how I felt here, not because it was vacation, because that wasn't an easy, it wasn't like a celebratory thing for her. It wasn't an easy thing. She was really trying to just sort of mitigate some of the suffering for her kids, to get them through this transition of a first holiday. But she took an action step and she created something that really felt good. And what she was really leaning into is this is what life can feel like when I take charge, when I take charge of the circumstances, when I lean in and I'm really clear. I want to be calm and I want to be relaxed and I want to be playful and I want to have nice holidays. So it is about this just sparking some curiosity about what you can do to make life feel how you want it to feel right now. And yes, you're going to come home to some annoying divorce paperwork, but we also remind her, guess what? It's temporary. Once you get that paperwork done, it's done.
Yeah. Plus, doing the paperwork itself isn't a feeling, it's a
Hmm.
neutral task.
Hmm.
You get to decide how you feel about it,
Hmm.
right? And it doesn't mean that it doesn't trigger the have to stuff, oh my gosh, I have to look at things I haven't looked at before, which brings up a whole other topic that we talked about today, or that I have to face some things, right? It does bring up those things. So I'm not saying it's all rainbows and unicorns, but even that, even facing things you've never faced before,
Hmm.
you can choose to look at that as incredible opportunity to learn, to empower yourself, or you can look at it with dread. You
Right.
know, we do have so much more power than we realize in how we want to feel. We just have to train our nervous systems to get on board with that because it's different, right?
Hmm.
I've avoided knowing what my financial picture is or knowing what's on the other side because of the perceived danger that lies over there. And it's rarely as bad as we think it's going to be, first of all. But
It's
second
far
of
worse
all,
not to know and
it's
deny
far
and
worse not to
pretend
know.
and say like,
Yes.
oh, I don't want to look at that, right? Particularly, we brought this up a lot today, particularly about finances, right?
Yeah.
So I love that you brought in this whole notion of opportunity. I mean, you can acknowledge, oh, I don't want to deal with the finances. This is just an area that I haven't really wanted to look at. She was talking about some particular thing, and we reframed it for her and said, but you know what? How did it feel to then go ahead and do that? Or then find, to take charge of that, to feel like I actually am in command about this.
And avoidance shows up. Avoidance is a form of resistance.
Mhm.
Okay, period. It just is. And it's not conscious resistance, it's resistance because there's some perceived safety or something that's the monster under the bed, right? What am I going to uncover that I don't want to see? And so by taking the steps little by little, we realize, oh, that's not a monster under the bed. That was just my imagination.
Mhm.
So, yes, we can use information as opportunity. It's also how we empower ourselves, right? The more I know, the more power I have, period, about anything. The
Mhm.
more I'm certain about, the more power I have. And even if it brings up uncertainty, okay, well, at least I know that I need to look over here at the
Mhm.
uncertain thing. And it's not a bear that's going to eat me. It's simply okay, I haven't looked at that way and I need to look at it differently or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
There's
there's
so much opportunity in stepping into the things that we think we need to avoid.
and just also recognizing that we get to decide how we show up for the party.
Mm.
So there are things every day with work, with mothering, with whatever it is that's like, there are things that we do that we don't really, want to do, love doing. We may have resistance. We may be avoiding. I mean, it's like, who wants to file their taxes? Sit down and do, I mean, it's not exactly. But at the same time, for a mama who's deconstructing to reconstruct, you know, it's an ability to say, okay, I'm not really jazzed about this. I'm not super excited about having to do this thing, but I know that it's bringing me one step closer to where I want to go and where I want to, how I want to feel and how I want to be in my life, how I want to be empowered, how I want to show up for my kids, how I want to show up for my divorce, how I want to be in control, how I want to be in charge. The more I resist and the more that I avoid and the more I pretend that I don't see it, I'm still dragging that along with me. We were really reminding them of that. It's like you're still dragging it along. Because listen, every mama in that group, we joke, but we're very serious. They have a PhD in coping mechanisms. Because most of us were raised to show up, be good girls, put a happy face on, keep the peace, people please, fix, you know, and
Yeah,
there's where in that equation is there room for you and the reality of what's coming up? Because we really have to acknowledge the avoidance. We have to acknowledge where we want to run and we all have coping mechanisms when we don't want to face something.
that's right. And the other place that that really showed up today with a couple of the mamas that are newer to the group was the avoidance around filing the papers, right? And especially when things aren't super contentious
Mhm.
in this moment, isn't it interesting how we can convince ourselves that, oh, it's not that bad? Oh, I can put up with
I'll
that a
wait
little
for
bit
the end of the
longer.
summer so
I'll
we can.
wait for the kids to be in school again next year or the house to sell or whatever the plethora of excuses are, essentially, because these mamas have made the decision already that this is
Mhm.
what they want. And it's such a beautiful reminder because one of the moms, I think, said today, it would almost be better if it were an emergent situation where I needed to do something right away. And it was like, oh, honey, don't you see that the emergent situation is that you are putting your life on
Mhm.
hold, your beautiful future that you know you want and deserve, your vitality.
Mhm.
That's the emergent situation.
Mhm.
You know, when can you just allow that potentially to be enough of a reason to not continue to delay? Because
Mhm.
she said, my biggest fear is I'm going to be in the same place next year. And guess what?
And we were
If you
like,
don't
yep,
take the steps,
yep.
right? You don't take the actions that are in alignment with what you want, you will be right here.
I absolutely love when you said that. I actually wrote it down. So you jumped the gun and you said it before me. Um, no, it was so great. That was like, ooh, that was one of those jolting moments because it's very easy when you have coping mechanisms. It becomes like a default setting, right?
Yeah.
So every time some discomfort comes up, then you like sort of like switch over into that. And it's like, oh, it's fine. I can, and when you said that, it really drove it home. And I think she really heard you. And the beautiful part of this work and the part of this group is that we are seeing the reflection every week with the mamas in that group of the teachings that they have gone through in our class because we're really working with them about, with boundaries. We're working, bringing awareness to the nervous system, connecting the dots, understanding triggers, understanding what's mind to control, what's not mind to control. These are strategies. These aren't just divorce strategies, these are life strategies. But mamas that show up, mamas that lean in, mamas that are like really receptive to the possibility that, you know what? I can do life differently. I can see it differently. I can be differently. I can act differently. And you know what? I'm going to get different results. Those mamas are moving the needle. And we're seeing, you pointed that out today, how we're actually seeing them, like they're regurgitating, well, I need to put a
Mhm.
boundary here, or I need, and I realized that my nervous system, I was dysregulated, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful because again, and I'm so grateful to you for having really brought that part to our program and constantly working with our mamas. These gifts, well, I'm calling them gifts. They're tools and strategies, but they are
Yeah.
gifts. They are gifts to self. They are gifts to recalibrate and to remind you that you matter. Your needs matter. And the condition that you're in matters because it will impact all the big decisions that you're going to make, the tough conversations you're going to have, and the condition that you're going to be in. Your self-care, your well-being, it matters right here, right now.
Yeah, it's so true. And just to reiterate a little bit about the nervous system piece of it, it's because change can only happen when we feel safe. And we think that that's a feeling that comes from outside of us, but it's a feeling that we create on the inside of us. And so being able to give the skills and the tools for these moms to be able to create safety from the inside out, that is the biggest game changer.
Mhm,
And that's not something that most of us are taught. So it's such a beautiful gift, not just in this time of divorce, certainly in this time, it is so needed. But for the rest of your future, you now get to go through life knowing how to create safety for yourself, no matter what's happening.
mhm.
That is vital to
It's a
living
game
the kind of
changer.
lives. Yeah,
Yeah.
it truly is. And we're watching it with these moms time and time and time again. And it's the biggest honor. And then when we have someone graduate and say, I am walking away with, she's hearing the newer moms, right? And she's saying, oh, I've so been in your shoes. I've so been afraid of that too. I was also avoidant in that area, whatever it is. But to know what it is to be on the other side and that you can do it and you can do it and come out in your power, quote unquote, she said, that is the best
Hmm.
because now she's in charge of the rest of her life.
Hmm.
It's such a beautiful thing. Obviously, I'm passionate about it. So,
Oh, well, I mean, and that's infiltrated everything and it transformed how I walk through life because the bottom line is adversity happens. It's going to unfold. It's a part of life. This human experience can be messy. Here's the difference. When you have evidence of having walked through a fire and getting to the other side and feeling really good about it and knowing how strong you are, knowing how capable you are, knowing how heartfelt you are, you can pivot a lot quicker. And you can just recognize, oh, this is happening. I don't like what's happening. I don't like this feeling, but I know what to do with it. I know how to calm my nervous system. You cannot make big decisions when your body is dysregulated. We've all been there. We know what
yes,
that
we
looks
have.
like.
And
And,
it's
and it ain't pretty. Exactly. I was going to say, it ain't pretty. I actually had lunch with a friend the other day, and she was telling me about a divorce, her divorce, and a comment that she made that she really, to her child, that she really regretted. And, at first I was just teasing her and I was like, oh my God, you didn't say that, but it's like, yeah, we've all been there. You're going to say it. You're going to make mistakes It's not all going to be perfect. It's not going to be pretty. You're not going to get an Academy Award for any performances here. Cut yourself some slack. Because here's the other thing, while that does create more chaos, while that does create a mess that needs to be cleaned up, it's also an opportunity for you to show up, take responsibility for it, talk to your kid, say, you know what, I'm really sorry about the way I handled that. And I'm really working, whatever it is, it's all opportunity to really transform how you want to move through life. And when you catch yourself doing something like that, when you catch yourself about to make a regrettable statement or take a regrettable action, it's like you're going to be able to pivot sooner.
Mhm.
You're going to be able to
Yeah.
avoid that because you know where it's going to guide you and lead you. And ignoring your feelings, ignoring what is coming up in this process will not serve you. It will not serve you.
Nope.
It's just going to come out another way. So, I know it sounds like, some Hallmark greeting card to say divorce is full of opportunity, but it is. It really is. I know you are overwhelmed and you may be heartbroken or you may be enraged or just whatever but you're just up in your feels. But I want you to know getting regulated is going to be your best friend. It's going to be the best gift that you can give yourself so that you can put this all back together the way you want it to be put back together, the way you want it to look and feel.
Yeah. And that's how you take your power back.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
how you create the future that you want and are so deserving of. And, we're watching it. We're
Yeah.
watching it day by day with these mamas. So
And it's an honor to work with them. It's an honor to
it
work
sure
with
is.
Joe.
Mhm.
And we just have these powerful classes tag teaming each other and just holding this space and wrapping our arms around these mamas. And we nudge them and we love them and we see them, but they are the ones who are recognizing I need this support and it is transforming how I am able to show up for this divorce, how I am able to show up for my kids, how I am able to show up for myself. And you know what? It is temporary, and I'm going to get to the other side of it. And you know what? I deserve to be able to get to the other side of this in the best possible condition.
Yes. Yes.
I want it.
Because if you didn't know somewhere deep inside of you that you were so deserving of that, you wouldn't be here. That's the bottom line. And
Yeah.
so let us help guide you to take those steps to create that incredible, gorgeous future filled with possibility.
Mm-hmm.
It's what it's all about.
Yeah. Just being
Yeah,
your best self. Just
that's
showing up
right.
as your best self. Go
Which
through
doesn't
with
mean the
it.
perfect self, to your point. It
No.
doesn't mean it's without mistakes and without road bumps along the way.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, you get to recover from them faster and you get
Mm-hmm.
to see them sometimes before they happen so
Mm-hmm.
that you can avoid them.
Exactly. I was
Yeah.
going to say, so you can avoid them, not
Mm.
avoidance, not avoiding my feelings, but avoiding the
Mm-mm.
chaos, right? It's gorgeous. And I am honored every day that I get to be on this journey with mamas. And
Mm.
if you're more, curious about our work and want to learn more about the intuitive divorce method, just check us out over at our website, intuitivedivorce.com. Make sure you're signed up for our newsletter because there's lots of good stuff that comes out every week, tools, tips, programs, apps, you name it, because we love what we do. We really are dedicated to transforming the experiences and outcomes of divorce for mamas and their kids and legacy and the rest of the world till kingdom come. So if you're suffering in silence, please just know that it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. There's a community here waiting.
Hmm. Yeah. So thank you, Joe, for another
Right.
amazing
Thank you.
class. And
Yeah.
we hope to see you, mamas.
Yes. Till next week.
Till next week.